Celine Arkwright felt the cold, biting wind of the Valdirian ruins cut through her skin, but what really sent chills down her spine wasn't the weather. Something was calling her, a distant echo, like an ancient melody lost in time. The ash-covered ground beneath her feet seemed to hum with an invisible force. What once appeared to be just a war-torn land now pulsed with strange, uncontrollable power. Like the ruins were whispering her name. She approached an altar adorned with ancient inscriptions. The words were in a forgotten language, but her heart recognized the rhythm. There was something here, something waiting for her. When her hands touched the blade, the cold metal immediately warmed, responding to her presence. A wave of energy surged through her body and she almost lost her balance. Her eyes glowed with the power of the magic awakening inside her. But what surprised her the most was the feeling. The blade hadn't just chosen her as its bearer. She was part of something much bigger. Something that transcended time, history itself. That moment, marked by the power of the Blade of Dawn, would change everything. But before she could grasp its true meaning, the sound of boots hitting the ground interrupted her thoughts. On the other side of the ruins, a shadow was approaching fast. Celine knew exactly what that meant. The Scarlet Hunters were near. They couldn't know she'd found the blade. They'd do anything to claim it, to ensure the Crimson Empire kept control over the ancient magics. She spun on her heels, grabbing the blade with both hands, feeling its power threaten to consume her essence. What the blade's magic awakened inside her was a pure, wild force, and she knew she couldn't let it take over. It was the start of a journey that would take her far beyond the ruins, to a destiny she didn't fully understand yet. But before she could think of her next move, a figure appeared in front of her. Kalen Droskar, a warrior marked by deep scars, looked at her with a hard expression. He knew Celine's life was in danger, but unlike the others, there was no fear in his eyes. Only a quiet understanding, as if he'd already experienced the chaos the blade's magic could unleash. "I don't know who you are or what the blade represents, but I can help you get out of here," he said firmly. Before Celine could respond, Rhea Velthorn, a quick-witted archer with eyes as sharp as her arrows, appeared next to Kalen. She glanced at the blade, then at the approaching Scarlet Hunters. "You've got minutes, maybe less, before they find you. Come on now." Celine hesitated. What did they know about her? What did they know about the blade? But in an instinctive motion, she joined them. Without a word, the three of them ran through the ruins, with Celine feeling the magic in her hand pulse stronger. Destiny awaited them, and Celine didn't know yet how much her connection to the Blade of Dawn would change the world around her. What lay ahead was uncertain, but she knew a journey of mysteries and dangers was ahead. The Scarlet Hunters were right behind them, and the sound of their boots, growing louder with each step, echoed against the stone walls. The chase had begun. Crossing the forgotten lands of Valdirion wasn't easy. Celine, Kalen, and Rhea felt like they were being watched all the time, as if the ruins themselves whispered secrets buried for centuries. The shadows seemed to stretch as the trio moved forward, creating an atmosphere as oppressive as the mission they had ahead. Every step they took on that ancient ground was a reminder that time had claimed this place, erasing stories but leaving traces that begged to be uncovered. Celine felt the Blade of Dawn pulsing in her hands, as if something inside her connected with the enchanted metal. It wasn't just the weight of the blade, but the weight of an immeasurable destiny. With every vision she had, a distant memory surfaced in her mind, reminders of a woman she never knew, but who felt like she was in her skin. An uncomfortable sense of belonging, as if she were a part of herself. Those memories weren't hers, but at the same time they felt deeply hers. Kalen, with his closed-off expression and distant gaze, started telling stories about the ancient war. He spoke of the battle between the forces of Valdirion and the Crimson Empire, how the magic had been sealed forever, and the sacrifices many had to make to ensure the war was won. Celine listened carefully, but something inside her made her question how much of those stories were absolute truths. The Crimson Empire, with its thirst for power, seemed to have left indelible marks on history, and the blade she now wielded was the key to it all. Rhea, on the other hand, kept silent, watching the shadows in the trees and the path ahead. She knew more than she let on, knew what the blade represented. It was a weapon of power but also a curse. Like all those who had tried to wield it before, it was a catalyst, and there wasn't a single person who hadn't been marked by it. Rhea felt like she owed Celine something, but there was this feeling deep inside her pushing her to help her. Maybe it was a shot at redemption, maybe it was something bigger than that. As the days went by, Celine's visions were getting stronger. She started seeing flashes of a battle, screams and echoes cutting through the air, memories from a time before magic was banned from the world. She saw figures of fallen warriors and a woman with silver hair, dressed in golden armor. The woman looked at Celine with a deep stare, like she knew the key to the blade was in her hands. But what Celine felt wasn't just a connection to the past, it was a responsibility that seemed to grow with every step. Kaelin, noticing the confusion in her eyes, spoke in a heavy tone. "The war ain't over, Celine. It's just changed form. You gotta understand what that means." His words were heavy, like he was trying to tell her something he didn't even want to believe himself. The fate of Valdirion was being reshaped, and the blade was the centerpiece of it all. Celine could feel that her destiny was tied to this old war and that the prophecy involving the blade's power was slowly starting to unfold. When they reached an ancient, destroyed village, Rhea pointed to the ruins of a lost temple, almost swallowed up by the jungle. "There," she said, "that's where they say the Temple of Shadows can be found. It's the only place the blade can be fully awakened. But, Celine, listen up. The Empire won't let us get there." Her words echoed in Celine's mind, the weight of responsibility growing. The blade was calling her to a destiny she didn't fully understand yet. Suddenly, a distant rumble made them stop. Celine looked at Kaelin and Rhea, seeing the same fear in their eyes. The pursuit was closer than they thought. The Crimson Empire was always lurking, and getting to the Temple of Shadows wouldn't be easy. But in that moment, Celine knew there was no turning back. The blade had chosen her, and that made her not just a fugitive, but also a key player in the turning of Valdirion's story. She felt the pressure building, the magic inside her simmering like never before. Something was about to happen. She knew that soon she'd face the convergence of the past and the future, between the magic she couldn't control and the sacrifice she'd have to make to keep the Empire from ruling the land again. What was coming wouldn't just be a battle for survival. It'd be a fight for the redemption of a lost world. The Temple of Shadows stood before them, an imposing, dark structure, covered in moss and the roots of ancient trees. As Celine, Kaelin, and Rhea drew closer, the atmosphere around them seemed to carry a dense, heavy energy. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind and the distant sound of footsteps that didn't belong to them. Something was lurking, watching every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. Celine could feel the magic pulsing in the earth, like the temple was alive, reacting to their presence. The dawn blade, held in her hand, hummed softly, like it was calling to her, begging to be used. She didn't know exactly what to expect inside, but she felt like this was the moment her destiny would be sealed. Kaelin, with his serious face, was alert to every shadow and every step they took. He knew nothing here was a coincidence. "The entrance is protected by ancient spells," Kaelin said quietly, looking at the ruins around them. "It won't be easy getting in without triggering traps. We gotta be careful." Rhea, who had been quiet until then, nodded and started examining the symbols etched into the stones around the entrance. She seemed to be decoding something the others couldn't understand, her gaze sharp on the details. "These symbols, they speak of a awakening, something that has to happen in the temple's main room. But for that, the blade needs to be placed on the altar. And only a soul of pure blood can activate it." Celine swallowed hard, the weight of Rhea's words hitting her. Not just the blade, but the entrance itself seemed tied to something more than an old spell. It was a trial, a choice, and Celine started fearing that the real test wasn't just about the magic, it was about what she was willing to sacrifice. The blade, the temple, and herself. Everything was interconnected in a way she didn't fully understand, but she knew it would all come with a price. Carefully they moved forward, walking down a narrow corridor leading to the main entrance. The walls were covered in mysterious runes, almost like they were watching them. With every step, Celine felt the air grow denser, heavier, like she was being pulled into a place of immense, unknown power. "What do you feel?" Kaelin asked, his tone full of curiosity. Celine hesitated, trying to process the visions still coming to her, flashes of images from the past intertwining with the present. "I feel something calling me. Something in the center of the temple, on the altar." When they reached the main room, the space opened into a vast cave, lit by a supernatural light that seemed to emanate from the stones themselves. The altar was in the center, a large dark stone platform, with symbols flowing over it, as if the magic of the temple was alive, constantly moving. The dawn blade, the blade glowed in her hands, its edge reflecting the soft light that filled the room. Something was about to happen, something Celine couldn't control. Rhea glanced around, her eyes narrowing as she studied the surroundings. This is where Valdirian's fate will be decided. The power of the blade will be activated, but only if you can bear the weight it carries. Celine knew what that meant. This wasn't just a physical battle, it was a battle within herself. She would need to face herself, challenge herself, and be more than just the blade's wielder. She needed to understand what it meant, what the magic inside it represented, and what she was willing to sacrifice to restore balance. "Are you ready?" Kalen asked, his voice low, like he knew the magnitude of what was about to happen. Celine looked at him, her eyes reflecting the tension of the moment. "I don't know," she answered, honesty in her voice. "But I don't have a choice. Valdirian's fate is in my hands." With those words, she stepped forward, approaching the altar. The blade shone even brighter, as if it recognized the power inside her, like it was waiting to be unleashed. As she placed the blade on the altar, a thunderous sound echoed through the room, and the runes on the walls began to glow with a pulsing light. The ground beneath them started to shake, and an invisible force wrapped around them. Celine felt a surge of energy coursing through her body, the blade's magic merging with hers. Intense visions flashed in her mind, images of ancient warriors, mages, and sacrifices. She saw the woman with silver hair again, this time holding the blade on a battlefield, her gaze focused and determined. Celine knew in that instant that she was that woman. She was the blade's guardian, and the cycle was about to repeat. Suddenly the magic was interrupted. A dark figure appeared before them, its presence making the air freeze and time seem to slow. The Crimson Empire wasn't far off, and the battle for Valdirian was about to begin. Celine knew nothing would ever be the same again. The blade's awakening had called something else, something terrible. And whatever it was, she would have to face it. The room shook with the presence of the dark figure before them. The air was thick with an energy so dense that Celine could barely breathe. She felt her heart pounding in her chest, the dawn blade still resting on the altar, but now, a part of something bigger was being revealed. The sound of the glowing runes on the walls echoed like a distant chant, and Celine knew without a doubt that the battle had begun. Not just for survival but for Valdirian's fate. The blade's awakening had drawn something much more sinister than any of them could have anticipated. The dark figure in front of her began to materialize, an enormous presence that seemed to drain all the light from the room. Its red eyes glowed with a malevolent intensity, and its voice, when it spoke, sounded like the echo of distant thunder. "You dare summon the power of the blade? So young, so inexperienced. You have no idea what you've just unleashed." The creature's tone was cold and mocking, but Celine didn't back down. She felt the power of the blade within her, felt like she herself was the link between the temple and the impending chaos. The blade had a purpose and she couldn't fail. Kalen stepped forward, wielding his sword firmly. "We've come to face you. No matter what you are, you won't destroy Valdirian." The dark figure laughed, a deep, guttural sound that made Celine's bones chill. "Valdirian is already doomed, boy. And you, girl, are about to find out that the dead do not rest. What you've awakened is something that cannot be controlled. Not you, not this blade." With a flick of its hands, the dark figure began to summon a black aura that spread across the room, distorting the space around them. Shadows took shape, rising from the very floor like monsters made of pure darkness. Celine felt a wave of terror, but the blade in her hands shone with a golden light, illuminating the room. She could feel its magic connecting to the energy of the temple, feeling like she was becoming one with that ancient power. It wouldn't be easy, but she knew what she had to do. "Kalen, Rhea, stay behind me," Celine shouted, her voice now full of a confidence she didn't know she had. She raised the blade and, with a quick move, sliced through the first shadow charging at them. The blade cut through the air with ease, and the shadow creature disintegrated into a cloud of ash, but more appeared, fiercer than before. "We need to take them down before this magic consumes us," Rhea shouted, holding her daggers ready to strike. Kalen was the first to move, charging at the shadow monsters with his sharp sword, cutting them down with deadly precision. Celine, for her part, focused on channeling the blade's magic, feeling its power grow with every move. She knew she couldn't just fight like it was any other battle. These monsters weren't just physical creatures. They were manifestations of darkness itself, the ruin that was about to consume the world. And the blade was the key to defeating them. Focusing her energy, Celine raised the blade high and, with a cry of determination, unleashed a wave of pure light toward the shadows. The light spread through the room, destroying the dark creatures one by one. The ground started glowing with intense power. The dark figure in front of them seemed to get even angrier, its face twisted in a scream of rage. "You think you can destroy me with your light? You have no idea what you're doing." The room began shaking harder, and the air got thick and suffocating. The blade's magic was interacting with the temple's energy in a way Celine couldn't fully understand. She felt something deeply ancient and primal waking up inside her, something that hadn't been used in centuries. But she couldn't hesitate. If she didn't control this power, it would consume her, along with everyone around her. "Celine, you gotta control the blade's power," Kalen shouted, struggling to keep the shadows at bay. "If you lose control, it's the end for all of us." Kalen's words hit Celine like a punch in the gut, but she knew he was right. She couldn't lose focus, she couldn't let the magic take over. She needed to be stronger, smarter than the darkness in front of her. Taking a deep breath, Celine closed her eyes for a second and let the blade's magic merge with her own essence. She felt the weight of centuries of history flowing through her, an indescribable feeling of power. When she opened her eyes, the room was lit up with a bright, radiant glow, and the dark figure in front of her stepped back, visibly shaken by the energy. Celine was in control now. With one precise move, she pointed the blade at the dark figure and, with a shout, unleashed a wave of pure, concentrated light. The light collided with the creature with immense force, disintegrating it in an instant. The room was filled with a deep silence, the echo of the battle fading as if it had never even happened. Celine was breathing heavily, the blade still glowing in her hands, but the silence was deafening. She knew this moment wasn't the end. The battle had only just begun. The darkness wouldn't be defeated so easily, and the Crimson Empire was still on the move. But for now she had won. And that victory wasn't just over the shadows, but over herself, over the power she now controlled. The question that remained was, how far would she go to save Valdirion? The morning light barely touched the city of Valdirion, but inside the temple, time seemed to stand still. Celine stood there, looking out at the horizon through the opening in the central room. The blade of dawn rested by her side, but the weight of what she'd just done still hung over her. The victory over the dark forces had been crucial, but deep down she knew there was still much more to come. The Crimson Empire wouldn't be easily defeated, and the darkness that had awoken inside her still hadn't been fully understood. Kalen appeared by her side, his expression serious but relieved. "You did what had to be done, Celine. No one else could have done it." He looked at the blade with silent reverence. "But what comes next? The Crimson Empire's gonna try something even bolder. They know we have the blade now." His voice was tense, but he didn't seem to hesitate. There was something deeper in Kalen's words, something Celine already knew. The Crimson Empire wouldn't stop until they destroyed Valdirion. And now they knew the key to defeating them was in her hands. "We have to go to the Fortress of Ruin," Celine replied, not taking her eyes off the horizon. She knew what that meant. The path to the fortress was dangerous, full of traps and betrayals, but that's where the last key to victory against the Crimson Empire was hidden. And the blade would be the only thing that could unlock it. The thought of traveling to the fortress didn't scare her, but the reality of being hunted by darkness at every turn was starting to weigh on her. The blade, though powerful, was still an unstable presence, and she knew she couldn't use its power without consequences. And then there was the magic that had been awakened inside her. Something deeply ancient, something even she didn't fully understand. Those abilities weren't just a gift, they were a curse disguised as power. Rhea stepped up, her expression calm, but her eyes shining with the same determination Celine felt. "We know what we have to do. We go to the fortress, find the key, and destroy the Crimson Empire. And if anything else stands in our way, we face it together." She looked at the blade and smiled. "If the darkness tries to swallow us, it'll be the light that guides our way." Celine felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Rhea's words, full of hope and confidence, made her feel stronger but also more responsible. They were ready for anything, but that didn't mean she wasn't scared of what was to come. The blade's magic wouldn't be easy to control, and she didn't know how far their destiny would take them. "Let's go now." Every second counts, Celine said with a firmness she hadn't felt before. She knew the path to the fortress wouldn't be easy, and the last key was just the beginning of a deeper, darker journey. The Crimson forces were just waiting for the right moment to strike again, but Celine knew that with the blade in her hands and her allies by her side, nothing could stop them. As the group got ready to leave, the sound of the temple doors slamming shut echoed through the big hall. The road ahead was foggy, full of uncertainties, but one thing was clear: they were ready to face whatever came their way. The darkness threatening to swallow Valdirion would have to bow down to the dawn's light. As they crossed the gates of Valdirion and moved toward the unknown, the city behind them seemed peaceful, but the sense of urgency was thick in the air. The Crimson Empire wouldn't rest until the blade was destroyed, and the final battle was about to unfold. But Celine, with her renewed courage, knew this moment would decide whether it was salvation or damnation. In the distance stood the ruins of the Fortress of Ruin, an imposing structure that seemed to challenge time itself. The ancient stones, worn by the ages, were covered in moss and darkness. But Celine felt something else in the air, something bigger, something waiting for her. The real fight was still ahead, and she knew the answers were deep inside that fortress. What she didn't know was what else she would have to sacrifice to win. Looking out at the horizon, Celine felt like the answer was within reach, but what would she do with that power? The blade might be the key to defeating the dark forces, but what would happen to her soul when all this was over? Only time would tell. As Celine and her allies' journey deepened, the weight of their choices became clearer. The Fortress of Ruin was ahead, and every step they took seemed to echo through time and shadows. The Blade of Dawn, once a symbol of hope, now carried the weight of a massive destiny, a power that could both save and destroy. But inside Celine, something else was being forged. Fear and doubt, while still there, no longer controlled her. The decision was made. The sacrifice would be necessary, but she wouldn't face the darkness alone. The Crimson Empire knew its time was running out, and no matter how much they tried to hide in the shadows, the light of truth and justice would catch up with them. Every lost relic, every buried secret, was about to be uncovered. In the heart of the fortress, among the ruins of an ancient world, the answers were waiting. But more than that, the true essence of Celine's strength would be tested. It wasn't just the blade or the ancient power she carried, but the courage to face her own demons. With the final battle about to begin, Celine's allies were ready for whatever came their way. Kaelin, Rhea, and everyone else joined forces, each with their own pain, their own fears, but also with the hope that together they could change the course of history. A hero's strength was never just in the sword they wielded, but in the ones they fought alongside. The Blade of Dawn, with its golden glow, now reflected the truest meaning of sacrifice, not just on the battlefield but in Celine's heart. She knew the real power wasn't in destroying the enemy, but in protecting what could still be saved. The shadows wouldn't consume her because she had found within herself a light that could never be snuffed out. The battle ahead would be the hardest, the most bitter. But Celine knew, with unwavering conviction, that she had become more than just the bearer of an ancient blade. She had become the guardian of hope, the last line of defense against the darkest forces in the world. And with that, she would face the Crimson Empire, not with fear, but with the power of destiny, sacrifice, and the light that would always live in her heart. Celine's journey, though still far from over, would be remembered as a tale of courage, unity, and an unrelenting fight against the forces that try to wipe out all that is good. And as the Blade of Dawn cut through the shadows of the night, she knew the legacy of light would live on forever, because even in the greatest darkness, hope would always find a way. And in the end, destiny would no longer be just a story to tell, but the reality everyone would have to face. If you like this story, don't forget to leave a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. I'll catch you in the next video.